big stunner, 100. You stupid, just shut up. Keep breezy, I'm gonna. I'm big boy, done.
John, we're back.
Yeah, buddy.
We got an episode here that we've been noodling and working on for a while. Pretty excited.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Awesome. Well, we got a couple things in the show today. We're going to talk. The NBA season kicked off yesterday. We're recording on a Wednesday, so last night season opener. We had 2 games. You saw Ronnie and check into a real game, and then I got a psychology of music taste. Like, what's the psychology of music taste? I have a comedian's take on it. And then the main part of our show, we're talking about the films of 2007. And I've had this hypothesis over the years that maybe 2007 is the best year for movies that will ever happen in our lifetime. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk through those movies. And then I got a new thing that I want to start trying because, John, you're regular guy. I happen to be empty nester. So I have a little bit more freedom and time to explore the arts. But you're a regular guy. You're in the midst of kids and kids sports and all that. Yeah. And so every week I want to give you a homework assignment, and people who are listening, I'd love to if they took the homework assignment too, and immerse in something new that you might not otherwise immerse in, and give you some accountability there. So we'll do that this week. So. But from the top, NBA, a lot of people kind of clown on the NBA, like, I don't watch the NBA until the playoffs or until, after football season's over, that sort of thing. I love basketball.
Me too.
So I'm on all the time. Basketball's on at your house, right?
All the time. Yeah. When it's the season, it'll start to take over the background of the house. I like to have, football on this time of year. You were talking about it a couple shows back. It's the same thing with basketball. I love the sound of the crowd, the announcers, the lights, the camera, the teams, the matchups. And I get real excited around playoffs and March Madness. That's like one of my absolute favorite times of year. Lots of nostalgia memories for me with NBA playoffs growing up. That's when I really fell in love with basketball, was the old days of the bad boys, the Pistons, when they had back-to-back 88, 89 championships, and they went up against, the Celtics. And my dad turned it on and he got excited about it. And because he got excited about it, it excited me. And then, man, my first team was the Pistons. I was born in Michigan, but so my whole family's from Michigan. And so, my dad was a bad boy. He graduated from Michigan State, which, there's been some great names that have come out of that school in basketball.
Magic Johnson.
Yeah, Magic, Draymond, recent, other players.
Draymond's in town tonight playing the Trailblazers here over.
Oh, sweet.
Over there. I told my wife to look out for the Warriors because she actually, where she works, she actually parks in the Moda Center garage, which is the Portland Trailblazers stadium. So
nice.
Yeah, love the NBA. I'm happy. People have, I get it when people say, well, it's boring the first part of the season because there's so many games and these games don't mean much and that sort of thing. But the NBA has gotten better in the last few years. You were in Texas during a big chunk of the San Antonio run. And I tell people all the time, after Mike left, there was kind of a vacuum. Michael Jordan, after he left, there was a bit of a vacuum. And eventually the dynasty was San Antonio and they filled it. Yep. And the problem there was they were boring.
See, I liked it. I understand that.
The basketball was good. The basketball was good. But the storyline around San Antonio, they're from a small market. Yeah. They're
fundamentally sound.
Probably shops at Old Navy. He's just not an interesting dude. It was. There was
he used the backboard with his shots,
sensible bank shots. It was. The NBA was boring. There was a minute there where the West Coast teams were amazing. Remember that Kings team with Vlade and Bibby, Stojakovic, Doug Christie.
White Chocolate made his move in there for a minute.
Yeah. They would have won the championship had Robert Horry not picked up that ball that fell down to his ankles there in the last few seconds of that against the Lakers.
Big shot, Bob.
The NBA was interesting then because you had a lot of good teams. Then San Antonio had their long run. There just wasn't enough good teams. There wasn't enough good story. And now there's good parity. I mean, there's the last few years, there's going into the season, there's 5, 6, 8 teams who they need to go into their games and their practices thinking we have a shot at getting to the championship game or getting to the conference final. And so that makes it interesting. So it's fun. And there's that in-season tournament now. So I love basketball.
Yeah.
College season's going to start up soon.
Yeah.
So I'm in on that.
Yes, sir.
WNBA just wrapped up. Watched that championship game. Did you watch the final?
I didn't watch the game, but I caught up on the highlights, and it seemed exciting. I watched the most WNBA this year. So, I mean, I can't say that I had caught a game prior to this season ever. And, my daughter's picking up the basketball. She has been for some years. And then she said to me, Dad, why are the women's games never on? I want to watch a couple of players.
Yeah.
And so we subscribed for a little bit to the WNBA app or YouTube.
The League Pass.
Yeah. We watched it for a month, catching some of her favorite players. She really dialed in 2 years ago when LSU won. She really liked that team and followed them this past season alongside Oregon State. We're Beaver fans, lady basketball fans.
Yeah.
And yes, sir. But, one of the things when you bring up basketball that I find interesting, and I think it just is another progression in the sport, was all the hype around, it's hard to remember, but, when the draft happened a year ago, and there was so much hype around Wemby, people didn't even really know of him. And they, this word generational player got thrown around.
Yeah.
And I remember when they called the draft order through the lottery and they announced the Spurs got the first pick. I got excited because I'm a Spurs fan. I'm one of those boring Spurs fans. I'm a homer. So I root for the home teams in Texas here. And I bounce around a little bit. But one of the things that I found interesting about the NBA during that time, it sparked something sub-NBA culture around, trading cards.
Trading cards coming back. It sounds
they're having a moment. Yeah, trading cards they're on this. They're fully on. And one of the things that changed everything with the trading cards is they introduced a grading process where you can grade cards. And when you go back in as a kid, you would get trading cards and you would say, oh, this is in good condition or mint condition. And that was just kind of like,
book. You have to buy a book,
and you put it in the book. Yeah, you get the Beckett book price guide, and you'd see a little up arrow or down arrow like a stock market, which was cool. I think that helped. But then they went into this mass production where for a decade, trading cards were so mass produced that none of it was worth anything. And then they introduced a grading process where you send a card in, they put it through this machine that does the analytics of what would make a card a grade from 1 to 10. And if it lands at a 10, it exponentially makes a card more valuable. And it's hard to find these older cards in gem mint 10 graded condition. And so all of that culminating around trading cards, and then Wemby gets on the scene and he just blew up the trading cards with arriving and delivering on the generational talent I think that we see and the potential there, and just what a alien freak he is on the court. So
can't wait to see what he can do.
Changer,
Did you get a Wemby card? Have you scored?
Yeah, I did. As soon as those cards came out, I hopped on eBay and I ordered just a couple of his rookies just to have in my, up in my stash.
Have you got it hermetically sealed and in a safety deposit box?
See, that's what I'm saying. That's what the grading is. They put it in a hard case with the grade up above, and so it's just interesting with my kids and seeing. Man, I'm happy for trading cards because I had them as a kid. So
I still have mine. I have no idea what to do with them. I don't even know what I have. So for whatever reason, I have baseball cards from 87 to about 91. So those are the cards I have. And I got to have 1,000 and they're in a box. Right.
Nice.
And the only one that's in a case is the Bo Jackson one where he's got football pads on and it's black and white and he's holding a bat.
Yeah.
I have that one.
That's awesome.
I don't know if it's worth anything.
It is.
And then I have a bunch of all the Cubs from that era, late 80s, from basically Ryan Sandberg era, Mark Grace. Yeah. I have all their cards because I was a Chicago kid. I'm from Chicago. That's where I was born.
Harry Carey.
Yeah, Harry Carey. he's an icon. Hey. So I have all those cards. And I even have the Jose Canseco rookie card. I know I have that with the little trophy thing on it. So I have them, but I don't know what to do with them. And so now they're they're approaching, gosh, 30 plus years old. I just one day, I'll see. I just kind of keep tossing them around every time I move.
Yeah.
We'll see.
That's one of the things about the NBA I like. I like the culture around it. the fanfare, the stories. Like this year has some good stories to it. Is Ja Morant going to be the man that he needs to be, that we all know he can deliver on the court? And then, I
don't know if we know he can deliver. I don't want to get into the details of it.
Yep. And then you got the Wemby. Can he?
Are you watching Starting Five?
What's that?
Netflix followed 5 guys through the season last year.
Nice.
I'll totally forget who they were, but it's Tatum, LeBron, what's his name in Minnesota? They're
and Edwards.
Edwards, Jimmy Butler, and this center in Sacramento. I'm blanking on his name.
Yes.
Sabonis.
Yes.
So follows those 5 guys. And it's really well done. It's a really well done documentary. I'm a few episodes in. It's really neat. Like I've kind of found a new appreciation for Sabonis specifically because I never knew anything about him, but now I do. But you're right. The stories are great.
Yeah.
The WNBA was awesome. My wife and I went down to a sports bar here to catch the final. And as you can imagine, a sports bar in Portland for game 5 of WNBA finals was absolutely packed.
Yeah.
Like jam-packed. So it was a really cool experience to kind of experience that moment.
Yeah.
I love the WNBA. I love women's basketball. It's an awesome game. Mm-hmm. My only complaint with the WNBA is why is it in the summer? It's not that it's hard to watch because I can't find it. I get the league pass, and watch what I can. But the game, I'm not sitting down in front of my TV in the summer. I'm not in my house, And so a lot of the key games are on Sunday afternoon,
right? But I think
July.
Part of that, how can it compete with the NFL, which is a fall and winter sport, and then the NBA cranks up, and that is the tail end of winter into spring into the first of summer, and then you got Major League Baseball closing out. So, I mean, with the sports seasons, where do you find what could be the most potential?
I think it should run in parallel with the NBA. How cool would it be? Now I know they don't have the Stars moved to Las Vegas, so not in San Antonio anymore. Mm-hmm. How cool would it be to go to a doubleheater?
Yeah,
you go on Saturday, you watch the women's game, you stay in the gym, and then you watch the men's game. That'd be awesome.
I think that's an awesome idea too. But what I would say is put it on alternating nights of NBA games, because for me as a sports fan, I get a little sad when it's a Tuesday night or a Thursday, and I just want to have that background sound, and the only thing I can watch is the crap that I don't want to watch. So I mean, I'd be willing to turn it on in between.
I'd love it. Yeah, I'd love it to happen
off nights
in conjunction. I know, and I don't know the reason why they did it in the summer at inception. What is it, 25 or 50? I don't know how old it is, the WNBA as we have it now. But I think it was, we want to be different. We want to separate ourselves from the men and do our own thing and ride on our own strength. But when I look at college sports, especially basketball, if you're a fan of LSU men's team, you're also a fan of the LSU women's team.
That's and a good idea, man.
And so they play the same opponents, different schools. That'd be cool if the LA Sparks, had a rivalry with now the Bay Area Valkyrie. They're going to come next year along. You have this state rivalry across. That'd be cool happening in conjunction with the men's team. I don't think it degrades the women's game and says it's we have to ride on the strengths of the men's game at all. For me, I just say that's basketball season. Play basketball during basketball season.
I wonder if there's a technical issue with the courts, like the arenas having to put in the court.
They can turn a gym around in 6 hours. They did it at Staples Center forever. The Clippers played there until this year. They'd play a Clippers game on Friday and a Lakers game on Saturday, and it would be a completely different gym. But anyway, excited about basketball. Got something for you. Okay. Right. Psychology of music taste. What comes to mind when I say that?
That there's something to be said about people with the music that they listen to. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. What is your playlist? And then you'll be able to tell a lot about somebody. It came to my mind the other day. I remember when we worked together, you said, if you want to know somebody's, spiritual health, take a look at how clean their car is. or their garage. Let them just peep the garage, and that'll let you know about how somebody's doing in their life.
Can they park in the garage?
Is okay. That means they might have some stability in their life.
I think you're onto something. So let me try another thought experiment. And this one, no one's going to take offense, but give it a shot. Give me a profile psychologically of someone who just refuses to listen to hip hop specifically. I don't listen to hip hop. It's garbage. It's not.
I mean, for me, it would be kind of like the Karen type that gets triggered by what the lyrics, hoes and drugs and money and so triggered by the lyrics, it curses too much.
Yeah.
That's where I would put it, kind of this hyper conservative, like listening to the fun for the whole family radio station type person.
They're offended by it. I often think about the guy who's just hung up on his classic rock. I got to think the overlap between people that like hip hop and people that consider themselves fans of Rush. There's very little, if not any overlap. Not to say anybody's wrong, right?
No.
It's just taste. It's how we feel, right? So I was flipping through the Instagram, and you get comedians every once in a while, and good comedians actually layer in good social commentary, like they're saying something, right? Good jokes can often come from that. And so the comedian's name is Robin Tran. And the premise she has in the joke, and it'll be linked in the show notes, the post on Instagram, is that she says, poor people don't listen to Radiohead, right? And first you go, well, yeah, I think that's true. And then she goes on further to kind of explain why. And she says, to enjoy Radiohead, you have to be in tune with your existential self, right? It's almost like it is an acquired taste to understand the music and structure of the songs, the lyrics, the messaging within there. It is beyond just everyday level. You have to go inside to enjoy something like that. And I think that's true of a lot of really good art, a lot of bands that you and I like. There's a mystery to it that you have to really immerse in. And at first listen, you might not like it. But as you start to tune in and you have to get inside your own mind and adjust, you can like it. And what she says is, if you don't have a good life balance, you're not healthy and I'll say these words because I talk about it all the time, coming from child development background, is if you're not meeting all your needs, then you can't go into your existential self and you can't enjoy Radiohead specifically.
That's interesting. Because if you look, you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
then that's what she says.
And at the top of the pyramid is self-actualization.
Yeah.
When you have your needs met, the basics, and you start, building up from there, then you can really, begin to understand self.
Right.
If you don't have your needs met, then you're according to the pyramid, you can't really you're not there yet because you're busy trying to find shelter. You don't have time to be thinking about your feelings when you gotta eat.
Or there's kind of the four major components of the self outside of your self-actualization. Are you physically healthy? Are you cognitively healthy? Are you socially healthy? And are you psychologically healthy? Like, you have to have balance there to then get into that self-actualization and to be able to enjoy any kind of art that's in that domain, whether it's Radiohead, whether it's, films that really require you to immerse in them and be present. You can't be present with the art if you're stressed about something, whether it's something as simple as, dude, I'm too hungry to sit down. No, I'm crashing. I can't, or I have pressure from just life or work. Right.
Yeah. I thought it was I got a leak with my plumbing in my house. My home is not livable right now. I can't listen to.
Yeah. There's outside stresses. Music. It's hard to immerse yourself in the art. And I thought the flip side of that was something that really came to my mind as I was talking to someone the other night at a gathering I was at. We were talking about music, and they were really interested in exploring new music. And it's similar to our story. Their kids were introducing them to music they were enjoying. They're our age, and they're trying, and they're enjoying new stuff, but not hip hop specifically, right? And so I think the flip side is true, where hip hop, at least the hip hop I listen to, which comes from the origins really of hip hop, which is the messaging and the cultural narrative is like street level, eyewitness type narrative, right? And I believe it's hard for people to understand hip hop to get, as you said, get past some of the vulgarity. I often talk about Run the Jewels. They're extremely vulgar. If you don't listen to hip hop and I played you Run the Jewels, you would never listen to hip hop again. It's very vulgar, dick jokes galore. But the cultural, the messaging about society, politics, it's heavy. I mean, there is good truth in there and really good art layered behind dick jokes, right? And I think a lot of people, they struggle with hip hop because they don't have a frame of reference to understand the context of where it comes from. If you haven't spent time immersed in Black culture or, a culture where hip hop comes from, or at least had enough contact with it, most hip hop is going to escape you. And then you start thinking about the hip hop that it gets really popular that white people in the suburbs like. You go back to like Jump Around by House of Pain.
Yeah.
The narrative there is very simple. It's really just about partying a good time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot, and occasionally like political stuff kind of comes up because, the average suburban white person maybe can relate to political things, or like the motivational stuff. I think like Eminem's, some of his stuff is just kind of this anger. Everybody can relate to anger.
Yeah.
But most hip hop is just a story of what's happening on the streets in a culture that someone had no experience with. I happen to spend a lot of time growing up immersed in Black culture because I was playing basketball at a high level. So hip hop just comes natural for me. I was secondary witness to some of those realities. And so I could immerse in it. So I think there's something interesting there. And it led me to this conclusion where for everybody, so listen to me. If you haven't listened to hip hop, your hip hop is out there. We just got to find it. You may have given up because you couldn't get past the vulgarity of some, or the narrative. You couldn't get your mind into the context of the narrative. And so you wrote it all off, but it's out there. There's hip hop that you can immerse in. That's good. So don't give up on the rap. It's good stuff. What do you think, John?
I think you're spot on, man. I love it. I love revisiting that and talking about it because it can be a genre of music that's easy just to write off, or to live in the 90s with your hip hop, especially kind of in our demographic of dudes.
Yeah.
And so, I'm trying to dive back in myself. I'm learning from you, my kids, and just, then it starts getting added to my algorithms and my, starts feeding me the things that if you like this rapper, then you'll like that rapper. And so again, that's what I'm loving about this process of these conversations we're having is it's reawakening my awareness of what's available around me through culture and not just living in the past, reliving the glory days. And in the journey and in the discovery of it, it's life-giving. Like it gives me a sense of joy. It gives me, a taste of the beautiful things around that matter, good music, good bites of food, art, I'm keeping my eye open.
Yeah.
I was driving around in a little small Texas town at my daughter's volleyball game, and I saw a little sculpture garden, and I just parked the truck for a second, walked by, I got out and was like, hey, this is cool. People put some heart and soul into this.
There's street art all over Austin. Have you been on Sabine between 6th and 5th?
No.
Between 5th and 6th Street in Austin, Sabine.
Okay.
There's little brass toads on the ground, on the sidewalk.
Oh, wow.
And they're not where you're going to trip on them. They're like under a bench. There's like a dozen of them.
Oh,
Take your kids there and go find all the toads on Sabine. It's one of my favorite little street art installs over there. That's just in was it Easy Tiger Bakery is right there. So if you like going to Easy Tiger, but I love totally. If you see some street art, get in there, go look at it. There's some in the park by us. I'm pretty sure one of them is just a vagina, but that the kids can climb on.
Yeah. Keith.
Yeah, it's cool. Whatever, you know.
Nice.
Art. Yeah, no, I love it. I back to the hip hop thing. I think the same thing. I start to think the same thing about country music. Like I often write off a lot of country music because, well, it's below me or whatever. So I've over the years I've learned to just kind of appreciate the context for which that music comes from, or any music comes from.
Yeah.
And if I can put myself in the context of the artist or whatever story or message or feelings they're trying to portray, then you can get past your own taste and maybe find a way to like something you didn't think you would like.
The way you described hip hop and the way you described, immersing in the culture through, your community and basketball and the things you saw, it relates on that kind of that soul level and that cultural level. And now that I've been in Texas for the better part of my life and spending plenty of time in rural communities, as cheesy as the, cliche country music of like, I drank 12 beers and my porch collapsed and killed my favorite dog and I drove away my pickup truck.
Yeah.
There is, but I get it now. Like there's a community and there are people, and I heard, someone say that country music is the story of our life. And when you listen to it, it's just storytelling, and it's good.
Country and hip hop are the same thing. It's a basic narrative of what people are seeing in their life, or at least traditional country. I don't know what the radio stuff is.
No, even now. Yeah.
So and maybe Post Malone is onto something.
I think so.
Maybe Little Nas X was onto something.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I want to talk about the films of 2007. When a lot of people, similar music, a lot of people will say, well, movies just aren't good anymore. Have you heard that? Where are you hearing that?
I think I said that.
Yeah.
And I think it came around the time, like you were saying last week with the Red N. I don't know when it happened. I don't know if it happened. It just felt like they switched how they actually captured movies. I don't know if cameras are just totally different. Like it just feels like almost it's shot from almost an iPhone, or it has a sterile type, overly kind of digital feel to it, where I feel it's lost its character and its flavor and the subtleties, like a good, coffee or wine or whatever, where when you watch a movie back in the day when they used to splice and cut the film and, retape it together and put it in, watch it from an actual reel, it's similar to like listening to a record or a cassette tape, where those imperfections are what made the feel and the taste of the film. And I don't know when, I don't know how, it feels like it just totally got away from it. To me, when I turn on a movie, I'm like, this doesn't feel like a movie.
Movies are different, just like music, I think the big change in music is creating music and distributing music has gotten super easy. So the threshold for getting your music to people's ears at scale is very low. In the past, first you had to form a band. Then you had to play local shows. You had to go to the bars and the clubs and you had to play. You had to get enough following to make enough noise so that maybe a record label would show up and then finance actually making an album. So you just right there was a culling of talent, for better or worse. I'm not, and so just the effort to make an album. Now I could literally do it right now. I have a microphone. I have the software. Like you and I could make an album today, and we could put it on Spotify tomorrow. Right. Nothing wrong with that. And I think that's at the same time, that's awesome, because music I might not have ever heard and my ability to access stuff is awesome. I love it as a listener. There's a little more work involved. That's kind of why we do the podcast, to help people find stuff. But movies has gone through a little different thing. It's gotten easier to make movies technically because of the digital workflow versus, as you said, an analog film stock workflow is expensive, cumbersome, and takes a lot of personnel and specialty to do. But really, it's the movies are different because you have the theater experience and the economy that goes with putting a movie into a theater, and then you have the streaming, straight to streaming kind of stuff. What's missing is kind of that middle ground movie, the mid-budget movie is, I think, what we're missing, because the mid-budget movie would like not make a whole lot of money at the theater, and they would make it all up in the DVD, right? And that's kind of gone. And so there is a case for it, but like anything, it's going through an evolution. And at the end of the day, I believe in people and I believe in art, and I think the good stuff is coming. I think we are, better movies are coming, but I think we're in a bit of a trough right now because of the changing economics, right? Big movies don't just have to be big in the United States. They have to be global successes now, right? Yeah. So, and what's going to translate across cultures is really just action and superheroes and maybe war movies. Comedy doesn't translate at all across cultures. Really introspective,
which is crazy
because
comedy's made up the better part of my childhood.
Right. Yeah. So if you loved comedy, you're in a dark place right now by movies, because the big ones, you're not seeing big comedies going into theaters anymore because of that. It has to be a global success to be that level of movie, or they're not going to make it. Comedy just will not translate, across cultures. I work with a lot of people all over the world, and I love to tell jokes in meetings, and you can tell when they don't hit when you're talking to someone from England or India, and they don't translate. But 2007, I have some data, John, I want to show you. I did a little data study of
your hypothesis.
My hypothesis was 2007 the best year for movies of all time. And so I went to the IMDb top 250, right? So IMDb, the top 250 is generated by the users, right? So it's their voting, and it's limited to, a certain number of reviews. I think it's well over 100,000 reviews that it has to be able to be included in the top 250. So I wouldn't say it is categorically the top 250, but because there's voting dynamics and that sort of thing. And when I look at IMDb scores, I don't think even the number one movie on their top 250 has a 10, and it's Shawshank Redemption. I think it's still like a 9.1 or something like that. So you got to like sink everything down. I would think the top 5% of movies in the top 250 should be a 10. So if I'm going to kind of regress that down, really a 10 is probably more like an 8.5 or a 9.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's the by year. If you're watching the podcast on YouTube or somewhere, I'm showing a chart that shows the oldest movie in the top 250 was around 1922, and then up to current, little into the 2020s. And there's a trend line of how many movies by year are in the top 250, and it's clearly going up. Like movies over time have gotten better, and you can see a little dip there, John, from maybe 2007-ish, in that area, kind of somewhere between 2000, 2010. And then it kind of starts to dip again.
That's pretty heavy. That's a big drop of all.
The trend is there.
Yeah.
And then so I had another visualization made that is what we call a density plot. So it's kind of if you're not looking at this, it's kind of like a little heat map with an X and Y axis of the score. So the average score of movies by year and where the density is. And there's this hot spot right about, kind of in the 2005 to 2010. There's a clear hot spot in the IMDb top 250 that says the best movies were in that era. And the main hot spot kind of goes from maybe 1990 to 2015 across all eras of movies. So interesting. So I think the people think maybe, or at least in their voting habits, they're saying maybe the movies were from that era, but 2007. So let's go through the list. And I want to, and these are in no particular order, maybe a little particular order because we'll do the best picture last. But really good movies. Like I own most of these and I've watched most of them dozens of times, right? And my favorite movie of all time is from that. So I want to start at the top. Ratatouille. You've seen Ratatouille, right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Is that a Pixar joint?
I think so. I mean, it is a animated flick.
It's a Disney Pixar.
Okay.
And your kids have seen it, right? What
Man,
where's it rank for them?
I don't think it's on. I don't think we've watched it together. I don't think we've watched this movie with my kids.
Okay.
I would say I need to, but
for me, I don't think it's Pixar's best. I think their best movie is Up, but I would say Ratatouille is a very close second.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would push back and say Toy Story, and/or Incredibles is on my list.
Yeah,
I just because I saw it and it was. I mean, I liked it. That was kind of pre-Marvel movies.
Yeah,
No, but
Toy Story was that was huge.
I mean, you asked the question about did my kids see it, and that's probably a separate episode. But man, my kids, we don't watch a whole lot of movies. We just it's really hard for me to get my kids, particularly at home, to watch a movie. Well, going to a movie theater is probably I guess you could say a quarterly thing. Yeah, maybe 3-4 times a year we're going to the movies as a family.
Your kids are at that age where they aren't going to sit down with the family and watch a movie. When they're little, they do. Yes, but and I've tried. That was I kind of gave up on it when they wouldn't sit through Back to the Future. I was like, okay, I failed as a dad. I don't know what to do. I'm at a loss. I can't get them to watch one of my favorite movies of all time that should totally land. It's just within 15 minutes, like they were gone, like physically out of the room. Yeah, and I forced my kids to watch it. Yeah, no. I use Toy Story. So I do, I work in tech, but specifically kind of in the product space. And I work with salespeople, marketing people. And a big part of what I do is put story around the business, put story around products. It's what my career's been. And I use Ratatouille as a case study of what a good story structure is. Because it's in terms of, like if you went to film school, I don't know if this is true, but if you went to film school and you wanted to study a film to understand the 3 acts of structure, what a protagonist is, an antagonist, their helper that they need, all those sorts of things, the love interest, it is a perfectly structured, like academically perfect, textbook movie. And so I use it all the time. And when I'm trying to explain how we put story around business models and those sorts of things, because you can have a good idea in business, but if you don't have a story, people aren't going to buy it. So I love Ratatouille. It's one of my favorites. And as a foodie, even the messaging is great, but it's just a perfect little movie. It is. It's a banger. So that's top of the list. Yep. I want to get one that I think less people have seen next on our list, which is Juno. Man, so I saw that in the movie theaters and loved it then. And then when you sent me this list, that was the first one I went back and rewatched. And man, I forgot how good it is. And it's so good because I think if my kids watch it, there would be these chuckling moments of like the language, language as in like the cussing, but like the cultural like slangs. Yeah. As they're talking, it really captured that time. That movie. So this list came out 2007. And so, man, I was, young and married at this time and not crazy movie going, just, not too removed from high school. And so it was an important plot, but important conversation too, for, I think maybe even parents at the time to really see like what being a 16-year-old today looks like. And it's not so, 16-year-olds being these washed up, good for nothing, like they, they're kids that, but it shows a level of, competency and independence of like, she gets pregnant and it's kind of an indictment on adults and their interactions with it. It's really neat. Yeah. So if you haven't seen the movie, the premise is Elliot Page, formerly Ellen Page. So a whole different storyline there as, she's struggling internally, or he's struggling internally with this battle that he feels like internally he's a man, and in real life, not in the movie, and is living as a woman, and in the movie playing a 16-year-old who's pregnant. The father of said pregnancy is played by Michael Cera. And her parents are Allison Janney, J.K. Simmons of Whiplash fame, great actor, love him. And so it's this vignette of 16-year-old pregnancy. And then Jennifer Garner and Jason Bateman play parents who their intention is to adopt the baby. So she's essentially now carrying their baby. And so a lot of the movie is her interactions with them. And they come from the other side of the tracks, if you will. They live in a nice neighborhood and make good money. And she kind of lives kind of in lower middle class, upper lower class, whatever kind of existence. And she's trying to have a relationship with them during her pregnancy. And so there's some friction there and some great comedy. But I would say it's kind of a tragic comedy. Yeah. But man, the social commentary of it is fantastic. And the story is fantastic.
It is.
And it rightly so. It won, I believe, let me go back. It won the best original screenplay.
And not to mention the soundtrack. That soundtrack carries. It's so good.
One of the last ones. When you go to younger listeners might not remember that movies came out with a soundtrack often as a marketing component, right? And a lot of times those songs weren't in the movie. Remember when Bryan Adams, Everything I Do from Robin Hood, it was everywhere for like a couple months. Yeah, but it wasn't in the movie. They played it in the credits. And so like it was a way to market the movie and make some money selling a record. Juno, it might have been one of the last ones. Great album. It's got some bangers on there. It's got that that song from If I Were a Carpenter album. Yeah. They're doing a Carpenter's cover. Is it Sonic Youth? Don't you remember you told me you loved me, baby? Yeah. And it's a fantastic cover. Cool soundtrack. Juno, powerful movie. And just goes into a really interesting social narrative. And it's like we said earlier, I think this is the kind of movie that's tough to make now. It's that mid-budget kind of thing it's so culturally poignant. I don't know if it's going to translate globally, something like this. And last thing on Juno is it was one of the nominees for Best Picture. So that list is, we'll get into it as we come to it, but it's the first nominee on the list that we're looking through. So great film. Yeah, definitely. You haven't seen Juno, and I think too many people have not seen Juno. You should definitely go check that one out.
Yeah, for sure. And it's on I think it's on Hulu. So it's streaming.
Yeah, links in the show notes, and IMDb actually shows you where it's streaming. Nice. Yeah, I think it's and you can always buy it. That's worth a rent.
It is.
It's worth a rent, worth the $3 or $4. Next up, Atonement. What'd you think of this one, John?
All right, so this is one on the list that I did a little bit of homework on and didn't see. So I'm gonna have to.
Well, then I won't ask you about it just yet.
I have to lean on you.
So this one was a tough one for me because I struggle with injustice. It's always been a tough one for me. So the premise of Atonement is, and it's tough to give you too much without giving it away. I don't want to spoil it for anybody because, it does have surprise and that sort of thing. But essentially, you're during one of the world wars. I can't remember offhand if it's one or two, and we're in England. Wealthy family with the big, almost castle kind of house. And long story short, is one of the sisters, a little girl, sees another sister with her boyfriend and misinterprets what she's seeing. Long story short, boyfriend unjustly goes to prison. And so we're kind of looking back on all of this and bouncing through time to understand some of the reveal. But a real heavy theme and some surprise in there. Keira Knightley, one of her more serious roles, apart from most people have seen her in the Pirates of the Caribbean stuff. And really interesting, really good movie. And for me, it's kind of one of those, you see it once, because the surprise, you never get the surprise again. You never get the reveal again. And I think that's why it gets the nominee for Best Picture, because it was a great surprise, a great plot twist, if you will, almost in the whodunit vein. and really well shot. The acting is good, but it for me, it's not it's probably the least rewatchable of the Best Picture nominees from 2007. But one you should see. You should see Atonement, just to kind of get a sense of things, especially if you like a period piece, which my wife loves a period piece. I don't mind a period piece.
Yeah, I have a hard time.
Do you like a period piece?
I have a hard time with it. That might be why I never caught it. It's just that particular time, and even back in like kind of the medieval times, like the dramas and stuff. If it's a night movie, sure. If they're slaying dragons, I'll watch it. But like that whole, man, I don't know. I can't do it. I struggle. Yeah.
It's a pure drama, human drama, relational, social, familial drama. And so it's a lot. It was a big movie in terms of what it was trying to do. And I think it deserved a Best Picture nod. But I wouldn't, if I was re-looking at it, I would probably slide in one of the other movies we're going to look at. But Atonement, obviously worth mentioning, and would win, again, all the movies we're talking about, I think would win Best Picture any other year. 2007 was just, that slate was so deep. So the next one, this one is, I love, and that is Charlie Wilson's War. Have you seen it?
Oh yeah.
What'd you think?
It was really good. I feel like I need to watch it again.
Yeah.
I feel like that's one that you understand more, you get more. But I'm a huge Tom Hanks fan. And even Julia Roberts, man, I like Julia Roberts. I think Pretty Woman, it was an awesome movie when it came out. I made me a fan of her. But and then
Amy Adams does a great job. Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yes, him. He was really good. I mean, he was probably the best in my opinion, even though Tom Hanks. But really liked his CIA role in that, and it was good.
This is when I'm trying to recommend a really good movie to someone that I have high confidence they haven't seen. And I say safe because there's literally nothing offensive in this movie to anybody. And so, if I'm talking to someone from different backgrounds and they're not ready for a Quentin Tarantino, if you will, or they're not ready for a really deep thinker type movie, from a Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah.
It's this movie. It's Charlie Wilson's War. And it's carried by this duo, and it's one of the best duos ever in a movie, and that's Tom Hanks and Philip Seymour Hoffman, the way they play off each other. Mm-hmm. I watched this movie. This is one that's always downloaded on my iPad, because when I get on a flight, I'll pick a movie often based on how long the flight is, and I fly a lot for work. And it is so watchable because their acting is so good. And I say, and when I'm in the mood I just want to see really good actors execute. It's Charlie Wilson's War. It's Tom Hanks and Philip Seymour Hoffman just going at it, doing their thing. And it is phenomenal.
There's some humor in it too.
It got great humor. It is hilarious. It's not a comedy, but it's dry, witty humor. Right. And the premise is, do you remember the premise?
Yeah, like a political dude and needs money to help fund, and basically ending the Cold War with Russia out in Afghanistan, and coming alongside the people in Afghanistan to help them and take them down. But there's conversation about the factual pieces of it and what it led to in the aftermath.
Yeah, it is based on a true story. A congressman out of Texas in a uncontested district somewhere in Texas, outside of Houston, I think, in the south part of Texas. Congressman Charlie Wilson, played by Tom Hanks, and he has a money sponsor. So this is a sausage making movie. It's about the sausage making of politics, of how things get done. And it really, I think he even says that this is how things get done when he's talking to somebody.
Well, because he's defending himself, because he didn't really do anything of any meaning other than get the money.
Yeah, he's a holdout Texas Democrat, and Julia Roberts plays this super wealthy, donor who has access and direct phone calls with congressmen, that kind of thing. And again, we don't know how true it is, but the outcome is true. And Charlie Wilson was real, and all that. And so you get to see kind of this play of rich people kind of getting their hand in there, and how things get moved along. And Tom Hanks, who has the ability to just get things done. And Philip Seymour Hoffman plays the CIA guy that is his point of contact for actually executing this covert war, which really happened in Afghanistan, where Russia had invaded Afghanistan and they were just kind of bombing everything. And America initially wasn't trying to defeat Russia, just kind of cause enough chaos in Afghanistan so that Russia would just keep sending guns and money and run out of money and just go mad, kind of like we did in Vietnam. And so you actually see his efforts to actually bring a more robust covert war to Afghanistan. And eventually, when Soviets leave Afghanistan, that leads to the fall of Soviet communism, the Berlin Wall, all that stuff comes into play. Really cool movie. And it reminds me of a book. I'm going to throw a bonus in here. So there's a book called All the Shah's Men, and I'll link it in the show notes. It's kind of it's a total dad book. It's a history book, with war components that's kind of written almost like nonfiction. And it documents the, I believe, 1953 overthrow of Iran, which is really the first operation the American CIA implemented, which was, Iran. So oil was discovered, and the rights to oil in Iran, or then Persia, was bought by a rich guy in England. And eventually this becomes British Petroleum that you and I know today. And in England, and basically, long story short, they've got Iranian people essentially working as indentured servants to get the oil out of the ground. And the Iranians they're coming into the modern era in the late 40s into the 50s post-war. They did well. They weren't as destroyed by the world wars as Europe. So they had an opportunity to kind of come up. And they're coming up too much. And British Petroleum and England are like, this can't happen. It's going to make our oil cost too much. So they ask a couple presidents. And eventually one says, okay, of the United States says, okay, I'll help. I'll send the CIA in and we'll overthrow the Shah of Iran. And some of the characters that are in the movie Charlie Wilson's War are real characters, or real people, and they're in that book. Really neat. And it kind of, if you want to kind of see world affairs, but bonus, All the Shah's Men. I'll link that up in the show notes. But Charlie Wilson's War, certified banger.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
for sure. Got to put it on there. Got to watch it.
Rest in peace, Philip Seymour Hoffman. I love his work. Such a good actor. All right, now we're going to get into the other one that I think is one of the ones I recommend a ton because a lot of people didn't see it, and you haven't seen it yet. So this is the next movie for you to watch, I think.
Yeah.
Don't watch any other movie, John, until you see Michael Clayton.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So the premise here is George Clooney is with a large law firm, and he's what they call a fixer. So he's the guy that shows up and he's a lawyer, but he shows up and fixes the problems for the other lawyers and kind of does some things that are in the gray area and off book and that sort of stuff. An important role. It's an important role for the firm. And they're involved in a huge case with what I would say is an analog to Monsanto, which is a giant chemical company that their chemical was killing people. And they've created an analog to that. And Tilda Swinton, brilliant actress, plays the lead counsel for that company. And they hire, if you know how that works, my wife actually works in the space. If you're the lead counsel for a large company, you don't actually do the lawyering. You hire the lawyers or the law firms to do specific things because they have specialties. And so they hire George Clooney's law firm, Tom Wilkinson, who I'm trying to think of another movie. Tom Wilkinson, he's a brilliant actor. He's known for, Grand Budapest Hotel. He's in that Full Monty, kind of flipping through IMDb right now. He's just one of those underrated actors who's just absolutely brilliant, and he kills it. And there is some just amazing scenes in this where he's interacting with George Clooney. And so this is a sausage making movie, and George Clooney is doing his fixing thing. And he's trying to he's trying to make everything work, but it's kind of falling apart for the law firm. And in that, George Clooney starts to have a change of heart. So he has this character arc, and it's one of those where it's just really, really good acting. And I can sit down with this movie at any time and enjoy it. It's not super intense, doesn't move too fast or too slow. The acting is great. The storyline has just good nuggets, good visuals. great lines, great scenes. It's a movie person's movie, and it rightfully gets the nod for Best Picture, along with, as we said, Atonement, Juno. Michael Clayton is the next one up in terms of Best Picture. And this is one of those movies where a lot of people didn't see it. Many people didn't hear about it, but this thing comes out a year earlier or a year later, it's the Best Picture, and you definitely hadn't seen it. So, and this is probably the movie that makes me think, man, 2007 was deep, because this movie is Best Picture any other year. And so really cool. Michael Clayton, one of George Clooney's best, maybe his best acting role, in my opinion. So I love that movie. Again, I think I keep this downloaded on the iPad too, because I can watch this on repeat.
Yes.
That's your next movie.
Okay. I'm on it.
That's your next
watch
one.
it.
Okay. The next two are the two everybody's seen. Everybody knows. John, tell me about There Will Be Blood.
Oh, man.
Your take.
Well, first of all, Daniel Day-Lewis. I mean, this movie had so much around, of course, this undertone of religion, but really like evil capacity, like within man, and greed and control over, if you want it all.
Capitalism.
Yeah. And just, I mean, some of it was just a hard watch because of how dark it gets within Daniel Day-Lewis's character, and the way that he was willing to forego everything, as a dad, as a friend, as even on a religious level, for his own, greed and control. And it's just his acting in it. And what's that other guy's name?
Paul Dano.
Yeah, Paul Dano, which I think his role in the Batman movie recently.
I think this is the movie that really broke him.
Yeah.
It really kind of put him out there.
For sure. And I can see why. I mean, they both went over the top with their acting in it, in terms of giving everything they had. It makes me wonder, is there a backstory with Daniel Day-Lewis? Because it seemed like he did Lincoln, and then he like almost retired from movies after. Yeah,
I remember that. There was a big dust up about him retiring.
And I wonder if it was just because of his role in this. Because
maybe it was just too much.
It was a lot.
But he wins Best Actor for this.
Yes. And I could see why.
It gets the nod for Best Picture. And what's neat about this movie is when you think back through it, what other characters do you remember?
Yeah, exactly.
You don't.
No.
It's Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Dano. Right. And if you're listening, go to the IMDb page for this and look through the cast. And you're like, I don't remember any of those people, because it was so I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing that these two people, it's almost like a 12 Angry Men, where it happens in one room, 12 people. But here it happens in the vastness of Texas, or wherever the oil is here. And it's really just two people carrying the movie, and they do it so well. That's what's amazing about this. It's just an exercise in heavy lifting by just two actors. It's incredible. And Daniel Day-Lewis just absolutely killed it in this.
It's a pretty brutal movie.
Not super rewatchable, not a rewatchable one, because it's a heavy ride, and it's not particularly short, is it? What's the runtime on this bad boy?
I sort of remember that other guy who was Daniel Day-Lewis. He was begging and pleading for his life in that moment, because he's like, I thought we were friends. Yeah. And then, he puts his hand on his face and shoots him in the head. Yeah. It's pretty brutal.
It's tough. It's a tough watch, but man, if you haven't seen it, and most people have, it's kind of rewatchable, but not super rewatchable. I've probably seen the movie 4 or 5 times. That's about it. But fantastic movie. Daniel Day-Lewis. And while we're on Daniel Day-Lewis, want to go back to one of his, bonus picks, which is called In the Name of the Father. We talked earlier at the show from 1993. We talked earlier in the show about soundtracks.
Yeah. And
this was one of those movies that was marketed heavily with the soundtrack, and some of the songs off this by I don't know if it was just Bono or U2 was involved, and also Dolores O'Riordan of Cranberries does some tracks on this, and the soundtrack is fantastic. But this is a movie where Daniel Day-Lewis again is in his bag. He's just doing his thing, similar to There Will Be Blood in terms of what he's doing to carry the movie, because he is the center of it, but much more rewatchable. So if you want to get some Daniel Day-Lewis just doing what he does, In the Name of the Father from 1993 is a great one based on a true story around the IRA and the bombings in London during the time. So love that one. But yeah, There Will Be Blood definitely deserved all the honors it got and the nomination for Best Picture. And now the film. I think I've said it before on the podcast that I think this movie could be, history may look back on this as the best movie ever made, or it's definitely in the conversation. And that is No Country for Old Men. What'd you think? I want the first time you saw this movie and the closing credits go on and you take a breath.
Yeah.
Where were you mentally?
Josh Brolin. I mean, for me, I love him. And so I just like him and liked his part. Like, I didn't know anything about Javier Bardem. Yeah. Bardem. Yep. And so thought, man, what a killer actor. And just, it has a grit to it in this movie too, like a violence level. That's just oof. But, edge of the seat type, gets your heart going at times. And just there are parts of it that sort of reminded me of Ozark in a way, where it's just ooh, man, you're getting you're in over your head
in the grime. Yeah.
In the grime.
And that's the movie. I think this movie, there's people who there's a lot of people who just didn't get it. They were they're kind of mad because the movie doesn't resolve nicely, because what we consider the antagonist, his story doesn't wrap up. There doesn't seem to be justice. That's part of it. But the other one is, I think a lot of people missed how the movie was structured. And it does a couple really interesting things. One, just at surface level, you might not remember this, but there is no score on this movie. There is no music in this movie. It's just the sounds of the wind in Texas, and across the plains. And it is just ambient. There is no score. And you often forget that. It's one of those things where you don't remember. And so that's part of it. But the other one is, there's components to antagonist, protagonist, main character that I love the structure and the study and the art of making movies. And the main character and the protagonist aren't always the same person. Right. The main character is sometimes referred to and plays the role of what we call the audience surrogate. That's the person for whom I'm experiencing the movie from their point of view. Right. And you get lost. You think you're experiencing the movie from Josh Brolin, from his character's point of view, Llewellyn Moss, but you're actually, and you are, he's your main character, but you layer onto him because he's the main character. You think he's the protagonist, and he's not. Ed Tom, played by Tommy Lee Jones, is the protagonist. He's the good guy, right? And so there's no hero. And a hero in movie structure, I'm giving everybody a film school lesson here. A hero is when the main character and the protagonist are the same person, right? Well, here the main character and the protagonist are different people. Obviously, the antagonist is Anton Chigurh, played by Javier Bardem, who takes home some hardware in this one for Best Supporting Actor. Well deserved. Yeah. One of the best villains of all time.
Yep.
And it just has so many layers, and it's just even the way the movie is made by the Coen brothers with those things. No music. The main character and protagonist are different, and the protagonist is barely on the screen. Right. And you don't realize it, and I'm going to spoil it. So pause this if you've never seen it. I'm going to spoil the movie right now. And I want to give a pause warning, because if you haven't seen it, pause, because I'm going to spoil it now. The antagonist and the main character have this conflict that you're waiting for. and Llewellyn Moss's character gets killed by somebody else, not even Anton Chigurh, gets killed by the drug cartel off screen. You don't even see it. Ed Tom just shows up in the aftermath, right? And so that's the note. And so a lot of people are pissed there because you're waiting for this conflict between what they thought was the protagonist and antagonist, and it doesn't happen. And in the movie, the protagonist and the antagonist never are in the same room, never have contact with each other. They almost do at the end of that scene. So back to it. Great movie. So many layers, right? So back to you, John. What did you think? Like I was interested in the emotional, or what did you think about what the movie was trying to say?
Like, where there is no law, then lawlessness abounds, this is like one of those movies where like the bad guys win, or, like,
or at least they don't lose.
And yeah.
No, and that the arc of Ed Tom it starts off one of the most profound opening monologues that's just over a scene. You're getting to know our antagonist because he kills somebody. And as that's happening, Ed Tom's character is narrating, and he's talking about, I don't understand what's going on in the world. And a man has to just be okay with that if I'm going to keep doing this, being a cop, because I don't understand this. And that kind of sets the stage. And I always think the narrative is your rule, and Anton Chigurh says this, what good is the rule if it brought you to this? What use is your code for living if it brought you to this? Because you're losing. You're going to die now. Yeah, and he is. So you have the main character of Llewellyn Moss who's just winging it and just trying to just haphazardly going through it. And then you have an antagonist who is methodical and has a code. And I am going to follow through what I said. I said, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Nothing will stop me. Even if I get what I came here for, which is this money that someone hired me to get back from you, I'm still killing you, and the coin flipping he does to kind of put that off of himself, maybe to give someone some last chance. It's just, is he, does code and law, like you said, does code and law make good, or do people make good? And he, it's the layers and the philosophy that's in it just is a great conversation piece. I love the movie. I kid you not. I've definitely seen it more than 50 times. It's my favorite movie ever. Flippin' love it. And it did pretty good in the awards. Obviously, it won Best Picture. And it was nominated, different actors were nominated for a bunch of different things, but and rightly so, Javier Bardem wins Best Supporting Actor for this one. Llewellyn Moss's character, funny story there is Josh Brolin was kind of out of money and really his career wasn't working, and this movie rebooted him, and he's done great. He actually did 2 movies that year and just restarted his career. So awesome movie. No Country for Old Men, banger. Watch it again. If you didn't like it, flip the script. Josh Brolin's character, Llewellyn, is not the protagonist. He's the main character. You can just understand that. I think you might like the movie again if you're someone who didn't like it and you didn't like the way it wrapped up.
Yeah.
And I think that's a cool mechanism. Denis Villeneuve did it with Sicario, where the protagonist and the main character are different people, and the reveal of this is the protagonist and that's the main character is an incredible scene where the whole movie changes and you're like, oh, I've been watching a completely different movie than I've been watching. We're doing something completely different now, and it's fantastic. So great movie. Honorable mentions. Have you seen the assassination of Jesse James by the coward?
Man,
Robert
I saw
Ford?
it back then. And I just remember around that time, like Ben Affleck had his career going, but Casey Affleck was quietly making his way. And I feel like this is one of those movies that, helped carry his career because, having Brad Pitt leading the way. And then, man, who was the other person in that? Like,
Let's be clear. Casey Affleck is a better actor than Ben Affleck.
I agree.
And I think that, I think you're right. I think this is the movie that created that space, created that gap. But yeah, you have Sam Rockwell. He plays Casey Affleck's brother in the movie. Yeah. He's great. Sam Shepard's in it. Brad Pitt is Jesse James. Mm-hmm. It's loosely based on a true story, I think. But kind of it's a really good movie. It's a great Western. Mm-hmm. Shot really well. The story, it's a slow burn. So if you can't handle a slow burning movie, you might struggle with this one. But yeah, it gets the honorable mention. I don't know if it got any nods from the supporting actor Casey Affleck. He got nominated right there. Nice. He obviously lost to Javier Bardem. Yeah, well, again, he wins supporting actor any other year. Yeah, it was just a stacked year. Right. It's a really good one. Did you see?
I did. 310 to Yuma.
310 to Yuma.
I actually went back and watched it because that was one I never had seen, and watched it. And Christian Bale,
Yep. Christian Bale,
Russell Crowe. And then, the story of just Russell Crowe and his, being a robber type, he's the bad guy. And then
he's a bandit.
And, Christian Bale is struggling to keep his land. And so he uses this opportunity to capture Russell Crowe and get him to the train. And, it's that story of it and kind of hanging on to Russell Crowe, knowing that he's capable of, just being the bad guy. When I watched it, I was hoping to see just a little bit more from Russell Crowe's character. It just assumed that he was like the worst, cowboy in town. But at the end, he gets his hand on the gun and handles business at the end. Like you see it, you see a glimpse of it when he gets to the train.
A very traditional Western.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you like a Western, this is definitely worth a watch. Russell Crowe had two great, he played the bad guy and the good guy this year. The next movie we'll look at was one where he plays a cop, but a traditional Western. Christian Bale plays kind of this, he's just a farmer. He's not a tough guy, and his son admires tough guys. Right. And so he's losing his land because there was a drought and lost some cattle. And so he's just having a tough time and has an opportunity to make a lot of money, enough to actually retain his land and kind of kickstart his ranch and get back to where he wants to be by taking this bad guy who's been arrested, who's like the bad guy, Ben Wade, take him to the train to catch the 310 to Yuma. Yeah. And so it's a car chase movie essentially, where they're just getting into trouble and people are chasing them. People are getting killed and gun battles on their way from town to this place to catch this train. And I don't normally like car chase type movies where it's just, I'm trying to get from point A to point B. I'm going to run into problems, but this one, it's really good. It does a good job. I
like that little subplot of just Christian Bale and his son, and really that kind of culminating at the end of like the greater purpose of being a man and being a dad.
Yeah. Good flick. 310 Yuma, traditional Western. Check it out. The other one that I like, possibly Denzel Washington's best role, or one of his best roles. I know a lot of people like Training Day. I like American Gangster a little better. So again, based on a true story, he's a heroin importer and dealer. And he's next man up in the game. Yeah, he takes over because the kingpin dies and he revolutionizes the market and just it's kind of a Icarus story. Flies too close to the sun, just does too much and gets bit. The cop in the story is Russell Crowe. Yeah, he's the cop that's out.
Josh Brolin's in it too.
Josh Brolin, he's the dirty cop. Mm-hmm. So again, a busy year for Josh Brolin and Russell Crowe with two bangers.
Yeah, I really liked American Gangster. Yeah. I enjoyed it. It was a good watch. And Denzel Washington kind of used that opportunity when the main kingpin went down to step into the market, but bring it to the next level by, the blue magic where all the street grade level drugs were getting, dumbed down. What's the street term for adding filler? Yeah. They were cutting the heroin. Yeah. So he just went primo
straight
level,
to the source. Yeah.
straight from Saigon or wherever, from across the pond.
Based on a true story.
Really?
There was a Frank Lucas, and he did go straight to Southeast Asia and had people working for him in the American military who were transporting on American military planes to his supply chain in America. That's real.
The thing that was interesting about Russell Crowe's character is he's this New York cop, barely making it. Family's falling apart. He's not there for his kid. His wife just hates his guts as a husband. They're going to court. They're getting a divorce. But he still has this sense of the law and doing what's right. And there was a defining moment when they came across a large sum of money, and they could have gotten away with, taking some from them for themselves. Yeah. And he turned it in. And that was when the plot thickens, because then all of a sudden it starts queuing in these other cops that are
if you don't take money,
Jersey,
they don't like you. Yeah,
the Jersey cops. Yeah, and but Russell Crowe stays strong through the whole movie, and that was just cool how it unfolds, how he does his work and stays slow and steady in what's doing right to eventually taking down the bad guys.
Yeah, he's a Serpico. He plays a Serpico character where he's the law matters. There's still law. I'm not going to be a dirty cop. So, yeah, no, a good movie, American Gangster. If you like a mafia movie, you like it's right in there. And the last honorable mention, which this is the art house movie of 2007, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. A lot of people didn't see it. It is in French, although the director, I don't believe he's French. He just wanted to do a French movie with the subtitles and that sort of thing. But the premise here, have you seen it?
No.
Yeah. A lot of people didn't see it. But one of those it's a really interesting human story. So our main character, Jean De, he is, if I remember, he had a stroke. He had some kind of thing where it put him in a coma for a few weeks. And when he wakes up, he can only move one eye. Oh. If you have a stroke, you lose the ability to. And so it's his story of if you like the human triumph, the spirit of humanity type movie. This is a movie you should definitely
check. Art piece.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful movie in terms of the cinematography, and I think that's a big part of it. Why it gets a nod as one of those movies, and again, one of those movies that might not get made, or at least not at this scale. But if you like a human survival, human overcoming odds story, he has a stroke. And some of his caretakers figure out a way to help him talk by looking at things and blinking to spell on stuff. And he wants to finish writing his book. And so that's the foundation of the movie. You're going to want to watch it once. I recommend it. And it rates high in IMDb. So one of those, but you got to be in the right mood because you have to really focus on this one. You can't just have this on and look at your phone. You're going to miss it. So Diving Bell and the Butterfly, one of those ones where it's like, why'd that get the nomination? But it deserves its flowers. But yeah, it wasn't. It's one of those ones where it could win Best Picture. Yeah. The Best Picture nominees definitely could win Best Picture in other years. This one, it would need one of those years, where I think of what's that Sean Penn movie, Mystic River, where it won Best Picture. But it was a weak year. I don't think it wins Best Picture. If it could win in one of those years, but the films of 2007. We wanted to talk through those. That always comes up, man. When people want to know about good movies, go to 2007.
Yeah, and so when I was looking at this list, and when you make the statement could be the best movies ever, looking at the analytics, looking at the scores, and then for me, looking at the list and how many of these great movies I missed. And so I was just thinking about sort of the parameters of what made it, the best year in movies ever. And when I was looking at the list, I just threw into the Google, best year ever in movies. And there was a chat in Reddit where people, and I don't know how many people, but a big number of people voted. Yeah. And so they've actually voted 2007.
Really?
Now, but here's the thing. Not far behind was 2004. Now, it falls within that bubble of what you brought up on the screen. And I'm going to rattle off the names. So lightning round. And why I think for me, I'm glad it falls in this window because like these were the movies I watched.
Yeah.
So 2004. And I don't know how they like scored it, or maybe it was just a vote. But so Napoleon Dynamite, Friday Night Lights, Anchorman, a movie that I would need to throw at you, or anybody who hasn't seen it needs to go back and watch it. One of my favorite dark comedies, like that didn't make it ever, Envy. With Ben Stiller and Jack Black with Christopher Walken. And that movie, I love that movie. I don't know why. I just love that movie. It's Ben Stiller and Jack Black are neighbors. They ride to the 3M factory together every day. They hate their lives. They hate their jobs. And one day in the middle of the night, Jack Black calls Ben Stiller and says, "I've got an idea." They're like, "We got our $1 million idea." And Ben Stiller's just depressed and like, "What is it this time?" And Jack Black goes, "Vaporize." And Ben Stiller's like, "What?" And he's like, "Here's the idea. We got a canister. When your dog poops, you spray the poop and it disappears. It vaporizes the dog poop. Get it?" Yeah. And he's like, "Go back to bed." And he's like, "But all I need is like $5,000. Can you want to go in on this with me?" And Jack Black's like, no, or Ben Stiller's like, "No." Well, Ben Stiller proceeds to invent it. It has wild success, and the whole time next door, Jack Black starts building the mansion, and he's driving a Ferrari, and it's like the typical Ben Stiller movie of the victim of his own innocence. And then all of a sudden shows up Christopher Walken. Good movie. And then Spanglish, but I mean I liked it. Dodgeball. Garden State, which was a cool sort of almost Juno-ish type movie. Good soundtrack. Mean Girls, Sideways, that was a good picture.
And that's the first Best Picture nominee that you're mentioning from the year. So it's a deep slate of the mid-budget comedy was having a year.
And then Shaun of the Dead, 50 First Dates, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. This is when we discovered that Jim Carrey isn't just a goofy guy. He's actually has some depth. Kill Bill, The Incredibles. Super Size Me, good documentary that kind of like reinvigorated documentaries a little bit, alongside Riding Giants, the surfing documentary. Meet the Fockers and White Chicks. These are the ones that I was just scrolling through movies of 2004, and I just started jotting down. I was like, I gotta put this out there. 2004 gave 2007 a run for its money in terms of my watching.
I think in Down Bill, it definitely did. At top of bill, it gets crushed.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. No,
Best Picture is $1 Million Baby.
Oh yeah. No, I didn't. Like
nominees for Best Picture: The Aviator. Remember that?
That was goofy.
Finding Neverland. Ray was okay.
Pee bottles from Leonardo DiCaprio going crazy.
Sideways was a Best Picture nominee. I think that for me, that's the one that I think has held up the best. Yeah. That one's rewatchable. $1 Million Baby's okay. I've never really cared for Clint Eastwood's direction. His stuff I've never worked with me. But one correction I have to make while I was looking through this, Mystic River did not win Best Picture. It was just nominated. One of the Lord of the Rings did that year. But I think that's a good call. I think middle of the list, it's strong. Like the mid-budget comedy in 2004 was killing it.
And you say best year in movies ever. I think that's a bigger conversation than just what my opinion or what I watched when I was 24 or 27 years old. Because like when I go back and watch the movies that are on this list, like the acting, the way you feel, the grittiness, but then along those scores, IMDb, the box office dollars, like the quality, that's what you're talking about.
The quantifiable stuff. Yeah. No, that's kind of where I was looking at, but I mean, it's entirely personal what you like. So very cool. 2007, check them out. So new feature that I want to start doing, as I said at the top of the show, John in the thick of it, kids sports, all that stuff. I want you to do homework. Okay. So the homework this week is to watch, I would say at least, I think they're 30-ish minutes, episodes of the show. This is one of those shows similar to like Michael Clayton. That's kind of on this theme and Charlie Wilson's War. When I think of a show, we're always talking about, you're watching, Shrink, you watching Ted Lasso, you watching, what was the dragon one? You're watching Game of Thrones, the shows that everybody's watching.
Mm-hmm.
Versus there's a lot of good shows that a lot of people haven't heard of because there's a lot of noise, and to find the gems in there is work. So this is one when everyone's talking about the shows they're watching, this is the one I've been bringing up lately because it is amazing, especially if you like witty, dry, like multi-layered humor with a really heavy message laid on top of it. And the show's called Our Flag Means Death. It's on Max. It's on the HBO. I thought it was on the Apple TV.
Oh, okay. It's on Max.
It's on Max. So the HBO Max. Why they call it Max, I don't know. It's a Taika Waititi. So are you familiar with Taika Waititi?
Mm-mm.
New Zealand guy.
Okay.
I think most people would know him because the Marvel movies were huge. Thor Ragnarok.
Okay.
He plays Korg, the rock dude.
Like, the voice.
Hey, man. Yeah.
He's the voice. I like him.
So, and he did Jojo Rabbit, which is probably his biggest movie to date in terms of just one he's directed. So he's directed a few of the Marvels and done some writing. So he wrote Ragnarok. So if you like the humor in that, where it's just kind of that way layered, like there's a joke, and then as the joke wraps up, there's another layer to the joke, and it just gets me. And so Our Flag Means Death. The premise here is this is based on a real human that existed. His name is Stede Bonnet. Stede, S-T-E-D-E. Mm-hmm. The actor that plays Stede Bonnet, Rhys Darby. He's also from New Zealand. He played in Jumanji too, with The Rock and Jack Black. Okay. He plays the NPC that goes, "Welcome to Jumanji." That's it. and he does a lot of voice work, so you'll recognize his voice.
Okay.
And he's in a bunch of Taika Waititi stuff, obviously. And so he plays Stede Bonnet, the gentleman pirate. He's like a rich guy, British, lives in the British Virgin Islands, Caribbean area, and is bored with life and decides, I'm just going to build a boat and go try being a pirate. And he hires a crew and just goes at it, and he's terrible at it. He's a terrible pirate because he's a gentleman. He's not going to kill anybody and all that kind of stuff. And Taika Waititi plays Blackbeard. And hilarity ensues, but also a really heavy storyline of love and what it means to be friends. And it's a great show. It's a pretty big ensemble, so it's going to take 3 or 4 episodes to really get locked into it. Yeah. But man, once you get tuned into Stede Bonnet, and once you meet Blackbeard, because I think we meet Blackbeard in the 3rd or 4th or 5th episode, it is just it's hilarious but touching, like you laugh, cry kind of stuff. You're like, oh man, that's powerful. Our Flag Means Death. So watch as much as you can, John. Homework assignment accepted. And next week, I want to hear the report on Our Flag Means Death. So listeners, same thing. If you haven't seen it, check it out, and then ping me on one of the Twitters or Instagrams or John, and give me your thoughts. Sweet. But underrated show, or just kind of flew under the radar. Bummer is it's 2 seasons. The 2nd season kind of wraps up abruptly because of the writer's strike. They do wrap it up, but it doesn't totally resolve, which is a bummer because you really fall in love with all the characters. It stinks when an awesome show. Like you could go for more seasons, and that you just don't get it. Really good. So I'm looking forward to it. Thanks. Awesome. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. If you can, do the review thing on whatever podcast app you're listening to. Hit those like buttons or whatever, or subscribe. We're starting to see you. I think we're over 1,000 listens at this point. Sweet. So I'd love to get some feedback. So rock on, everybody. Catch you next week. See ya.
Big stunner, 100. You stupid, just shut up. Keep breezy, I'm gonna. I'm big boy, done.